Well, hello. It's been a while. My name is Chris, and you're watching Bama Law. Um, I've been I've been away for a while. Um, I think it's been a month, a little over a month since I did a video. Um, I've had a lot happen. A lot happened. Um, let's see. I had brain surgery. That was awesome. I even posted a clip of it. I think I did that. I think it was like February 17th. I think I posted getting the staples removed. Somehow that was popular. I don't know why. I don't know who in the hell would care about staples being removed, but uh, yeah. So I had to have a shunt replaced that goes in through the back and literally goes into the ventricles of the middle of the brain and takes care of excess fluid. Don't know why. I just don't know why I have it. I just do. It takes a lot out of you. It, you have, well, as you can imagine, with the brain, you have a lot loss of cognition, memory. Probably memory's the worst. It made me realize that my fear of getting older is not getting older; it's loss of memory. Um, the loss of memory. Uh, that's the most. That's the scariest thing. Um, Not even death. I thought it would be, but it's the loss of memory. So I didn't think it was a good idea to do anything. I took my time, recuperated. Oh, and I got another contempt charge filed against me by a state public defender. Unfortunately, I can't go into it. I got cleared because I was right. They were wrong. They had no legal authority. And filed a federal lawsuit. So they'll see that one coming fairly soon. Um, I'm not sure I'll go over it once it's filed, or it's filed, but once it's served. Um, I have to I have to stop them. They are acting extrajudicially. Uh, they're acting without any authority. They have no authority to do it, and even the court chastised the hell out of them. So they get what they get. So they can suffer. Um, it's interesting to be back. I chose late because actually I did it at the last minute. I was like, yeah, it's gonna be a quick video. I'll just do a quick one, and hopefully no one will be on it or anything. I also didn't want to interfere with anyone else's stream, but it's been a rough month. It's been a really rough month. Financially too, because I had to hire me a lawyer. I learned a long time ago it's not a good idea to represent yourself. Uh, and it sucks because I didn't do anything. I literally got prosecuted for free speech, um, and it's not in Alabama. It wasn't in Alabama, so don't ask. Again, I can't go into it. I mean, the suit's filed, so I'm sure it's on Pacer. Unfortunately, but yeah, so that's what I've been doing for a month. Okay, now let's get into it. What are we looking at? I thought I'd do a little play. We've got this issue currently with the president and whether or not he has executive authority to deport people, and using the Alien Enemies Act, 1789. It's been modified since. I think the last time was 1918, to include women and any, I can't remember if it's boys or any child 14 and over that could be basically deported. And my reading of it, the only judicial oversight is whether or not when the person is at large and unknown, their location is unknown, It reads to me as if you go to the court and you get a warrant, and then you have to bring them before the court to make sure that, basically a habeas, to make sure it's the correct person. But that only says when they're at large. That's old. That's an old timey way of saying, you're on the run. They don't know where you are. You're at large. So, they know who you are and what you are, and you take off. That's, my reading of it. I may be wrong. That's fine. So anyway, we've got this issue with the president and whether or not he has authority under the Alien Enemies Act, and this juxtaposition with the court and our courts, I should say, more than one. And what can he do? Can the court take action and take control over the executive? Can the president tell him pound sand or kick rocks? What can they do? What can happen? So it brought up a case, and we learned it in law school. It's the case that started the Trail of Tears. A lot of people equate it with the demise of the U.S. Bank, or the Bank of the United States, which Andrew Jackson also, I don't want to say oversaw, but helped kill it. They did not renew it. But this case is Worcester v. Georgia. It's an 1832 case. It essentially started the Trail of Tears, at least for the Cherokees in northern Georgia. And let's go over that, because I've kind of pitted it against the Trendy Arugulas, since they're the ones that are being targeted, so to speak. And Worcester gives us the best insight into the battle or infighting between the court and between Article 3 and president. So you've got the judiciary branch, and you've got the president, the executive branch. So we'll go through. Could a modern president defy the Supreme Court like Andrew Jackson did in Worcester v. Georgia in 1832? If I can get my highlighter here to work. If the court ruled that the members of Trendy Arugula or any group cannot be deported, so what would happen? Would the court be able to tell the president, hey, you're going to do this? Or any court, you cannot deport these people, because that's what they're saying now. And in Worcester, the court ruled that in that case, you had a guy, I think he was a minister, that Georgia required permits to get to the Cherokee reservation or to their land. And the Supreme Court said, look, you can't do that. You can't, they have their sovereign territory. So, and SCOTUS had held that Georgia's law had no force in Cherokee territory, and Samuel Worcester's arrest was unconstitutional because he didn't have the permit. Georgia ignored the ruling, and Andrew Jackson then reportedly said, John Marshall, who was the Chief Justice at the time, John Marshall has made his decision. Now let him enforce it. Did he actually say it? Who knows? He might have. He may not have. It's an interesting. I wish President Trump would do it. I'm just being honest. I'm not one of these legal people or legal eagles that think the president should just bow down and kiss the boot of federal courts, or any court. If he's right, he's right. We have this idea that all of these branches are co-equals with authority. And going back to Marbury v. Madison, that's not the case. The Article 3 branch maintains its power over the others as a check, but there's no check on them. So what do we do when they do like they're doing now and are telling the president what to do? I think the president has the authority, the ability. For one, he's enacting an actual law that's been passed. It's hundreds of years old. And I think even if they determine that they are going to try to take over the executive and his ability, especially for international policy making, he needs to be able to sit there and say, enough, I'm not doing it. I mean, you can do what you want. I'm not doing it. So in this case, in Worcester v. Georgia, the federal executive did not enforce the court's decision, and it nullified through noncompliance. Now, back then, there was no FBI. There was the U.S. Marshals. That's it. So you had U.S. Marshals. He could have used the militia, I suppose, to try to enforce it. They didn't have posse comitatus, so that was passed after the war between the states. So I guess he could have also used the federal army to try to enforce that against the state of Georgia. Excuse me, but he did not. So let's get a hypothetical. I'm going to try to keep this brief because I'm tired and it's late. Let's do a hypothetical. What would happen if the Supreme Court says the Trendy Arugula's members cannot be deported? Which it's not even a hypothetical anymore. We actually have courts saying that. So assume the court rules deporting the Trendy Arugula members violates their due process. We've got that. That's new. I mean, known. They are doing that. So we've got, what if they violate due process? The other one that I haven't heard yet is the refoulement principles under international law, which means, well, I take that back. I haven't heard it called that. It's basically, how can you send them back to a place that's going to torture them or hurt them? That would run afoul of the refoulement principles. And lastly, or exceeds the executive authority under the Immigration Nationalization Act. We have, I think it's Boasberg that has basically ruled all three of them. There's been a few federal courts that's been involved in this. He's the one making the headlines. He's the guy that's swinging, that he's got a swinging dick. He thinks he's just the cat's meow. He can do whatever. You're going to do what I say. You will respect my authority. You will respect it. And I'm going to make you do what I want. I'm going to take control of the executive. Well, the executive needs to say, no, you're not. Because by the time it gets to the Supreme Court, the people that are doing what they're doing represent them win. Okay, they keep it locked in. It's in a court system. There's stays on it. You have Amy Coney Barrett says, we haven't gone through the system yet, and we can't do interlocutory appeals yet. We have to just let it go through the system. She has like a circle jerk over it. And she's even written papers on it and legal reviews over the subject. So she's got I don't know why she has this vested interest in it. And a lot of them do that. You must go through the process. Well, it may take 3 or 4 years. Maybe not. It may only take 1 or 2. But by then, you've got another president. And then they want to, they just cut them loose. So nothing changes. Nothing will change. If they are not booted from the country under the Alien Enemies Act, nothing will change. You won't get rid of anyone who's here illegally unless maybe you could, I guess, or give them, Congress would have to, $10,000 each and a free plane ticket, and send them on back to their home. Yeah, I mean, what is it? Let's see, $10,000. What is it? 10 million? What is that? Like 100 million, 100 billion, somewhere in there. It's not a bad. I mean, cheaper than what they're probably going to have to go through and go door to door. So it's just a thought I've had that maybe that's the way it should work. Maybe they should just use that. But for right now, he's using the Alien Enemies Act. Okay. So let's go with, could the president defy the court or the courts? Constitutionally speaking, no. Under Article 2, Section 3, it says the president shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. And in Marbury v. Madison, this is the one that gives us the whole problem with the federal government or the federal judiciary having oversight and control over everything. And they dictate who's right and what laws are unconstitutional. And literally, they have the most power of any branch. As long as you bring a petition to them, they can determine whether the law exists, regardless of what the people want or regardless of what Congress wants. Which Jefferson always argued that Congress should be that branch that's more important and has the most power. Your Federalists argued the opposite. They wanted a strong central government with a strong judiciary, and the judiciary would oversee and keep in check the other branches, but there's no one to keep in check them. There's no one. So in 1803, Marbury v. Madison established the Supreme Court's authority to interpret the law. Willful refusal to follow a binding Supreme Court decision would violate the separation of powers and the president's constitutional duty. He's got a duty to enforce the Constitution. He's got to be. But who is the one that makes the decision of what the Constitution says? Well, I mean, the Supreme Court's made themselves the arbiter of that. But would it violate it? Maybe. Probably. Does it matter? You know, for right now, if you're on that side, no, it doesn't matter because you want to have an outcome that you want in 4 or 3.5 years or so. He'll be out of office. If J.D. Vance doesn't win, you've got a Democrat in, and they may do the same thing, and just things will just start running them like a snowball. At the same time, I mean, you've got this issue with 10 million, maybe more, illegals in the United States. Many are going to self-deport. They're just going to leave. And, then great. We need to reform the system and allow them, at least to come in the front door and knock on our door rather than kick the door in. There are modern parallels to the Jacksonian defiance. In 1861, and most people do not know this, Lincoln actually suspended habeas corpus despite Chief Justice Taney's ruling in Ex parte Merryman. And one little note about the Supreme Court at that time, almost the entire court were Southerners, and they stayed on the court. They did not abandon their job. They stayed on the court, which is that says something. They believed in what they were doing. But in that, there was a strip from Maryland all the way up through New York. You could argue there was military strategy in that they had to have a free access through a slave state through Washington and up. But he suspended habeas corpus. He also did it in Chicago. There was Camp Douglas, Confederate POW camp. Nobody wants to talk about. No one wants to even acknowledge it existed. It was hell. Many Chicagoans, I guess that's what they call them, Chicagoans. Many of them were thrown in prison, just dumped for the entire length of the war. Why? Because they tried to help Confederate prisoners not starve to death. It was brutal. So it's not without precedent. So Lincoln suspended habeas corpus. Okay, so we have something that's been done. Trump era executive orders Travel bans were revised repeatedly to get around adverse rulings. The Biden administration faced injunctions regarding immigration enforcement. Texas v. U.S. He wasn't doing his job. He wasn't doing the enforcement at all. What's the difference between that and Trump saying, I'm going to go ahead and deport these people. I think I have the constitutional authority. The problem comes that the court wanted to say with Biden at the time that, the president had that right to be able to sit there and go, well, I'm not going to enforce the law this way. I think it's done X rather than Y. But here's the key. Presidents today comply with rulings eventually because of the rule of law, political backlash, and institutional checks made outright defiance unsustainable. They become afraid. And they don't want to piss off their constituents. They want to get reelected. But he doesn't have that problem. He can tell them to piss off. He's sort of doing it now. I'm going to do what I want to do. I think I'm right. You're wrong. The problem is going to come to what happens, just like with Jackson. Who's going to make the president or enforce the court's order? It only works by acquiescence. So if the executive, who, mind you, runs the DOJ, he has control over them. The U.S. Marshals, which they are the oldest law enforcement agency in the United States. They go back to 1789. They were created by the Supreme Court for their use in executing orders. They're all under the president. President can do what he wants as far as those guys. If he doesn't want them to, just like Biden, if he doesn't want them to enforce the law, he doesn't have to. Should he? Well, that's a different argument, but he doesn't have to. He can tell them, no, you're not going to do X, but Y is what I want. And then it comes to whether or not they actually obey the president, or do they say no to the president? And then you have a complete breakdown of the constitutional system. But the key is this: I've already covered that. Enforcement mechanism today. The Supreme Court cannot enforce its ruling directly. Again, it relies on the executive branch to implement them. If he refuses, now Congress could impeach. They could impeach him. Individuals harmed could seek injunctive relief or civil contempt sanctions. But again, who will enforce it if Boasberg or whatever his name is says, I find the executive branch, or he's not going to say the president. He knows he can't do anything. Even if it's criminal contempt, the president will just go, and really for any of it, he will do it for everyone underneath him. That's actually responsible for it putting forth and enforcing these presidential directives. But it's stupid because it's not going to work. The president's just going to go, hey, hereby pardon DHS Secretary Nome. That's it. Done. They can pardon him for any federal offense, including contempt, including a criminal contempt. He can do it. So all this guy is doing, this judge, is causing issues, and it's a constitutional crisis that will eventually occur. The question is, who will give in first? Will the president let it take its course? Or will he say, like Jackson, you've got your ruling, enforce it, buddy. Enforce it. Public and if this were to continue, public and international backlash would likely follow. I don't think Trump cares what the foreigners think, especially Europe. I don't think he gives a damn. I don't think he cares what Mexico thinks, or Canada. If he did, we wouldn't be having the tariff issue. Maybe he does on a personal level. but he's definitely following what he said he would do. But unlike in 1832, institutional norms and mechanisms such as the DOJ, federal courts, administrative bodies are much more robust and less reliant on a single person's will. They've got that deep state. They've got a deep state that can control things. Will the deep state actually do what the president wants, or will they actually do what they want, which is to execute anything he does and be counter to him? I don't know. That's the scary part. I don't know. No one does. I think it will give us the best insight into whether or not there is truly a deep state. Final comparisons: Jackson's case v. today versus today. Issue: in 1832, the branch that ruled was SCOTUS. Today, it would also be SCOTUS. Executive action in 1832, Jackson, the president, refused to enforce it. Today, Trump could try to ignore or circumvent. I think he could also try to just refuse to enforce it. He could tell them, no, I'm not doing it. You're not doing it. He could tell the U.S. Marshals that, no, you won't enforce it. You're not going to do this. He could redirect them. He could send them to Minot, North Dakota to do, I don't know, immigration. He could send everyone there. He's done it with the ATF. They all are down to skeleton crew. So he can do that. He could literally, then it becomes whether or not they disobey the president and act extrajudicially to go after or enforce laws or court orders that they think are valid, and they become the arbiter. It would create a complete, utter chaos. The legal mechanism to enforce. In 1832, the SCOTUS had no real authority. Today, we have Congress, contempt, court orders, media being the biggest one. I think media is the largest one. They condemn you to absolute obscurity or infamy. Consequences of defiance. Emboldened in 1832, it emboldened the states. Georgia said, "We ain't doing it. We're deporting these people. Get out." That was a bad idea. The natives have their own land. I'm a firm believer that the treaty should be enforced. We should recognize that they have, and SCOTUS has recently started to do so, to recognize that they have the right under the treaties and the Constitution in order to govern themselves. Today, if we would have a constitutional crisis, potential impeachment, I'm not so sure we would. I'm not so sure we would. That would be, well, hell, they've done it twice to him. So, but you've got a few seats of a majority Republican House. So, you'd have to have some flip-flop. Political costs. In Jackson's era, none. He was beloved. They loved him. Today, I think it would be severe in the modern era. I think the news media would cause that backlash. And to conclude the video, a modern president could attempt to pull a Jackson, to defy or ignore a Supreme Court ruling on deportations, but the legal, political, and constitutional consequences would be severe. It would be. We would be faced with something we haven't seen since almost 190 years ago. Now let me get that. Yeah, I guess that is right. No, it can't be. Yeah, that is about right. Wow, long time ago. It would cause us to have to face that. And I don't know that we as a people have the guts or the fortitude to withstand that. The Jacksonian example remains a cautionary tale. Without enforcement, The law is merely a suggestion, and that is true. Um, if the president decides not to enforce the law, it's not enforced. Who's going to make the president do it? If there's no law enforcement and the president sends everyone to Minot, North Dakota to do immigration and completely decimates the federal law enforcement, including the marshals, who's going to be the ones to do it? There isn't anyone. There is no one at that point. So it doesn't get done. No one, unless they usurp the presidency, literally overthrow the presidency. The only way to do that is that. So that's even bigger balls than refusal to enforce a court order. I wanted to do, I'll end it real quick with a mock executive order to show what it would look like. And I titled it Preservation of National Security in Response to Judicial Overreach by the President of these United States, April 21st, 2025. Section 1, Purpose. On April 10th, 2025, the United States Supreme Court, this is a fake, this didn't happen. This is all me in my mind here. The Supreme Court issued a ruling in Doe v. United States Department of Homeland Security, holding that the removal and deportation of certain individuals affiliated with the criminal organization, the Trendy Aragulas, or the Trendy Arugulas, would violate due process clause of the Fifth Amendment and applicable provisions of the INA. That is an act that is applicable in absence of the Alien Enemies Act. And that's going to be another thing. Which one is going to control? If they're in conflict, is there going to be a conflict with the court as to, do we go with the INA or do we go with the Alien Enemies Act? That's my guess is that's probably what it will come down to. This ruling, however well-intentioned, threatens the safety and security of the American people by prohibiting the removal of known violent actors and members of transnational criminal enterprises. Section 2, Policy. The executive branch, and in particular, the Department of Homeland Security, retains constitutional authority and obligation to safeguard the homeland. It is the policy of these United States that, remember, under the Alien Enemies Act, the president can set policies once he invokes those wartime or excluding the wartime, invoke the power that we are being invaded, whether it's by a foreign nation or little groups at the direction of a foreign nation, which is what he's done with these groups of people. Individuals identified as affiliates of Trendy Arugula constitute a direct and continuing threat to public safety. The executive maintains inherent Article 2 powers to conduct foreign affairs and protect national security. Those are both areas that Boasberg's trying to step on. He doesn't have the authority to do it. The president has the sole authority to conduct foreign affairs and have national security. That's it. Congress can pass laws, and then we're back to, does the president actually execute them? We'll find out. Enforcement priorities will not be suspended based solely on judicial interpretations that contravene their responsibility. Again, this is fake, just so everyone knows that watches this later. Section 3, Directives. The Department of Homeland Security is hereby directed. Remember, the president has control to do this. He has the power to direct his own agencies. Homeland Security is hereby directed to continue removal proceedings and deportations of individuals reasonably identified as members or affiliates of Trendy Arugula, consistent with national security priorities. And I could have added in there other gangs, because remember, he's labeled them as a terrorist group. So any terrorist group can be treated as such. They are hostile to the United States of America. And And he's got authority under the Alien Enemies Act to do that. The Department of Justice is instructed to challenge and resist the enforcement of the Supreme Court's decision through all lawful and constitutional means, including requesting reconsideration, clarification, or modification of the ruling. That would be trying to stay within the boundaries of constitutional authority. No executive agency shall construe the ruling of Doe v. DHS as binding, however, to the extent it undermines the executive's constitutional mandate to protect the United States. Again, it gives them the authority to enforce what they think the law is or how they should enforce it, rather than the Supreme Court being the final arbiter of everything. And the judiciary is doing that. They're getting involved in everything. Severability. If any portion of this order is held unconstitutional or unenforceable, the remainder shall remain in full force and effect. You get those in contracts all the time. You have severability in it. You know, if part of my contract is ruled void, it doesn't kill the whole contract. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand this 21st day of April, 2025, and it would obviously be signed President of the United States, Donald Trump. So that's what it would look like. And he could do it. It's just a matter of, will he do it? I don't know. You know, part of me wants nothing to happen and there not to be strife and trouble in the United States, and the other half of me wants it because we're in a bad situation. We can't handle that many people in this country, especially when we don't know who they are or where they are. This fictional order would provoke a constitutional crisis, echoing Jackson's refusal to enforce Worcester v. Georgia. But in today's landscape, such defiance would face immediate lawsuits and injunctions. But again, if the president doesn't want to do it, the president have to do it. You can tell him pound sand. Again, who's going to enforce the injunctions? No one. If the president says no, there is nobody else to make the president do it. He can do it. The only oversight that I could actually see is congressional oversight or impeachment. They could impeach him, and then they could remove him. Which they, in after the war between the states, they almost did with President Johnson. I think it was 1865. He was handing out pardons like they were candy to kids. He just kept giving them out to former Confederates, and they didn't like it. They didn't like it. Presidential resignations or refusal to comply from within the executive branch could also be a backlash. Massive media and international fallout. I don't think Trump cares. I don't think he cares. That's it. So that's a little bit of a, kind of just wanted to, give a little bit of a brief history lesson and a what if scenario. If the president were to implement what Jackson did, what would be the outcome? So I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for having me back. It's been a long time. I feel mighty rusty. It's late. I'm tired. So I'm going to cut it loose. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment, and be seeing y'all next time. Thanks.